Hi there, Buick owners. Today in your 2019 Buick Envision, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install Roadmaster's InvisiBrake supplemental braking system. There's 5 main components you'll need when flat towing your vehicle behind your motorhome. You'll need your tow bar, which is the connection between your motorhome and your vehicle. You'll need your base plate, which is the connection point on your vehicle for your tow bar to attach to. You'll also need your safety cables, which is a supplemental connection in addition to your tow bar. Your diode wiring, which takes all the lighting signals from your motorhome and transfers them to the lights at the back of your vehicle, keeping you DOT compliant in all states, as well as ensuring everybody behind you knows your intentions when going down the road. And lastly, you'll need your supplemental braking system, which will apply the brakes in your vehicle when you hit the brakes in your motorhome. Now, there are some supplemental things that you may want to consider. A high-low adapter may be necessary if your motorhome's receiver sits significantly higher than your base plate. The rule of thumb is you want to measure to the center of each, and they should be within 3 inches. If not, you'll want to look at getting one of these here. We have plenty here at Etrailer.com of varying sizes and weight ratings, so we've got one for your particular setup. Another component you'll want to consider for your Buick Envision is a fuse bypass kit. Because when you put your Buick Envision into flat tow mode, there are 2 fuses that it requires you to pull, and rather than pulling those fuses each time, we can just flick a button and now those fuses are disconnected. When we're ready to drive our vehicle again, we can take it out of flat tow and right back into drive mode. Those fuses are reinserted into the circuit. Roadmaster's InvisiBrake is a permanent braking system that's going to leave the smallest noticeable footprint in your vehicle, as all the components can be placed in remote positions so you can hide them. You can see here we've got our operating unit, which is the biggest part, located underneath the back seat. The operating cylinder is commanded by the operating unit that you saw under the seat, and this is what's going to pull on your pedal to apply it when braking is needed. And you can see here, this is remotely mounted underneath the driver's seat, right underneath the carpet. To help minimize the footprints that you see, the only thing that attaches to your pedal is a small bracket with a cable that goes to a pulley back on the Firewall. This cable is then attached to a cable sheathing behind the carpet that runs back to that cylinder, and when it activates, it pulls the cable from the cylinder down the sheathing right here on the pedal, applying the brake pedal. The breakaway switch does come included with your braking system, and we can go ahead and show you the operation here real quick. I'm going to pull the pin, and you're going to see that the pedal applies inside. We're now inside of our motorhome, and when I press the brake pedal in here, it's also going to apply the pedal there at the back. And we're going to know certain that the pedal is being depressed because we've got a monitor light hooked up here that goes to a stoplight switch in the vehicle, and this will only illuminate if the brake pedal is actually being moved inside the vehicle. So I'm going to hit the pedal now, and we can see the braking system operates immediately and is pulling our pedal, illuminating our indicator. The InvisiBrake acts like a time delay brake controller. The pressure adjustment on how hard it hits the pedal is going to be located on the unit here. To adjust it, you'll just pull out on the knob, and then you can turn it clockwise to increase pressure and counterclockwise to decrease pressure. We'll then just click it back in when we've found our spot that we want it to be in. If you want a truly proportional braking system, I would highly recommend Demco's Stay and Play Duo. That one's going to be similar in operation to the InvisiBrake, but it has an internal inertia sensor, so that way it can detect vehicle movement and proportionally apply the pedal, so that way the amount of pressure on the pedal is variable depending upon how hard you need to stop. If you have air brakes on your motorhome, then instead of the Stay and Play Duo, I would recommend Demco's Air Force One, as that one is specifically designed to work with air brakes. Now that we've gone over some of the features, you can follow along with me, and we're going to show you how to get this one installed. But I'm not going to lie to you, the InvisiBrake is one of the more tasking braking systems to get installed. If you're looking for something that you can do much quicker and easier at home in your garage, I would recommend Blue Ox's Patriot. That's going to be a portable system that you can easily move and requires very little installation to get it installed. But if you are planning on installing the InvisiBrake yourself, I highly recommend that you set aside some time to do so. We'll begin our installation by mounting all of the major components. The biggest one that you're going to need to mount is your operating unit, and we're going to put that in the back seat underneath on the driver's side. Go ahead and lay the seat down and slid it forward so you can see where it's mounted here behind it. To mount it, we just cut a couple of slits in the carpet, and the ears on the bracket will just slide into those slits, and that is going to keep it in place. It's okay if it's a little bit loose like this, it's not going to go anywhere. All of our wires are going to poke back into here, But before we start routing our wiring and showing you where all this stuff goes, we're going to go ahead and show you where the rest of the main components are, because that's where we're going to be routing all of our wiring and hoses and things too. The actuating cylinder we mounted underneath the driver's seat. There's a little flap here that's already pre-cut from the factory, and it'll sit right here in this opening underneath the seat. The side with the cable coming out of it is going towards our passenger side, and we just routed it underneath the carpet. So we'll have to pull up this carpet in order to get this cable routed to the front where we need it to be, and we can go ahead and leave this loose because we're going to need it up anyway when we go to route our wiring and hoses. The other end of our cable that you can see here comes over here. So we just kind of loop the cable around. We don't want to have any crazy hard turns with it when we're doing this. And then it goes up and we mounted it on the back side of the firewall there. So you can see our cable comes out here at this corner, and our cylinder over here is where the cable comes out. So it kind of does like an S motion underneath the carpet. And we want to have nice gentle curves there. We don't want to have any sharp 90-degree curves, as that can kink our cable. We then attach it to the firewall using self-tapping screws, and there was a stud that was already existing. So we went ahead and got us a nut and used that to tighten it onto that stud. If we go just to the left a little bit, you'll see the mounting location for the cable sheathing. We just used our self-tappers to mount that up there as well. And lastly, we have to connect it to our pedal here, and there's 2 brackets that come with your kit. You'll just use the 2 bolts that come included with it to clamp it around the pedal. And we can attach our cable to this part here. This part here is adjustable. These nuts do spin, so you can fine-tune the tension, because we don't want to have any hard tension on it right now. Our cables, we want it to be like this, where it's a little bit loose. And this will ensure that the cable's not pulling on our pedal when the braking system is not activated. The last major component you're going to need to mount is your breakaway switch, and this just attaches to your base plate. Most of your base plate manufacturers provide a mounting location for a breakaway switch, so you're just going to attach it to that tab on the base plate. We can now start routing our wiring and hoses. On our operating unit here, this is where we're going to start. You'll have 2 different harnesses that come in your kit. One with a 6-prong connector that has 4 wires in it, and that's this one here. It's got our green, yellow, brown, and white. So we're just going to plug that into our operating unit. You'll have another one with a flat connector that is 4 pins. And this actually branches out into 2 different harnesses. You've got your red and black wire, which is our powering ground. And then we have this sheath wire, which has a connector that's already attached to the end, and this just plugs right into the breakaway switch that we mounted in the front. We then have our hose that we'll need to tap into the vacuum system for our brake vacuum booster. And then we've got another smaller hose that comes in our kit, and this is what's going to activate the cylinder that we mounted underneath the seat. We routed all of these through a pre-existing slit in the carpet. This is all factory here, so we didn't have to do any cutting. We just poked our wires right down through that opening, and then we routed them over towards the outside of the vehicle here. We just went right around the edge here, staying away from the track, and it does come out here on the side. You do need to pull up a piece here. This trim panel right here, you just grab it and it just pulls right up. You can see the clips where it would clip in. They're just quick clips, so they just pull right out. So we just route our wiring and hoses and everything. We're going to follow underneath this. We're going to go under this panel, and we're going to come out the other side of this on the front. And just like we did in the back, we have to pull up another panel here just to make it easy to get our wiring and everything routed. So we're going to go ahead and hook up the small hose first, because this goes to our cylinder that we put underneath the seat. It attaches just like it did on the unit. It just pokes into the small hole. This is a nice quick connect fitting, so it just pokes right in there, and then that's pretty much it. We did cut this to length. When cutting this hose, I highly recommend you use hose cutters so you get a nice clean square cut, so that way it seals properly in the quick connect. You can get hose cutters here at Etrailer.com. The rest of our wiring routed forward underneath the carpet. There's a grommet located right here, pretty much where your left foot would sit. And we just removed the grommet and then poked all of our wiring and our vacuum hose through there. There's also a monitor wire that we're going to need to run, and that's going to connect to a stoplight switch that we're going to need to add to the vehicle. So that's an additional component you'll make sure you want to pick up if you want a properly operating monitor switch. So you want to route this wire down as well. We're going to show you how to hook up the stoplight switch once we've covered the rest of the wiring that comes with your braking system. All of our wiring passes through the grommet, and it does go into this opening channel here on the frame, but you can just poke your finger in there and pull it out through this open hole right below that. From there, we just follow our diode wiring that we had previously installed. right up through the opening. And you can see we zip tie it to factory wiring as we're going on our way because we want to avoid any moving objects and anything excessively hot. So staying near those factory wires, we know they're already routed in a way where they're going to be avoiding those components. Our wiring comes up here, and from here we need to branch off to a few different locations. We're going to start with the 4-pole wiring, and once you get it routed up here, we do split the white wire off, and I trimmed the excess, attached a ring terminal to it, and attached it to the ground stud located right over here on the driver's side. You can remove the nut with a 13mm socket, slide the ring terminal on, and then reinstall it. The remaining 3 wires, the green, the yellow, and the brown, we need to tap those into our diode wiring circuit so that way our braking system gets those lighting signals from our motorhome so it knows when you're pressing the brakes. So with the green, yellow, and brown, you can see where we had cut our diode wires. We took the wires that are coming from our braking system and just added it to one side. That's why there's a double brown, because we've got one brown from our braking system and one brown from the diode wiring. And then it connects on the other side to a single brown wire that just goes up to our connector at the front. We're going to do the same thing with the yellow and the green. I do highly recommend upgrading from the butt connectors that come in your kit to heat shrink butt connectors, since these do live outside the vehicle, and this will help seal everything up to ensure a long-lasting connection that's going to be corrosion-free. Our breakaway switch wire is routed right alongside with the wires that we just connected, but it's going to keep going past those because it needs to go down to the breakaway switch that we have mounted in the front. So we just go past our battery. There's an opening just below and next to our headlight here on the driver's side. We just poke through there, and I actually ran this wire while I had the fascia off when I installed the base plate, which makes it considerably easier. I highly recommend doing that while you have the fascia off. But once we got it through that hole, we just routed it down our base plate and connected it to the breakaway switch. It does just have a connector. You can see our connector right here. The 2 ends just plug together. You can't get it wrong because each side of the connector has one male and one female. The red and the black wire we route over to the other side of our battery here, where we're going to connect it to power and ground. Our ground we hook just directly to the ground stud on the battery, but for our power we need to put the fuse harness on that comes included with our kit. And this just pops up here, a couple of little tabs, and this whole thing will pop up. This is our fuse harness, so we attach that to the stud here on the battery, and the other end we will crimp onto our power wire. We also used a heat shrink butt connector 2 here, since it lives outside the vehicle. When you shrink these down, I highly recommend a heat gun over an open flame so you don't burn the wires or your heat shrink butt connector. The fuse doesn't come installed in the harness. You do get one with the kit. I would wait to install this fuse until we finished installing the whole braking system so we don't have any accidental activations of the system while we're working, or potential shorts if we're still working with some wiring. Next, we need to hook up the vacuum hose that we routed up. That's this one right here. And just like we did when we connected it to the unit, it does come with a small piece of vacuum line in our kit, and we can use that to attach it to the barb over here on our T. We did add the T in line between our factory vacuum brake booster hose, which is located right here. It just kind of comes down the side. So we cut out a small chunk of it, about the length of the section of components we've got here. And this T then, we need to use the thicker, this is the larger vacuum line that comes in the kit. And we're just going to cut small sections of it out to connect everything together. A small section is going to go from the T back to our brake vacuum booster here. This just loops around and goes to the booster. I did put a hose clamp on it just to ensure that it stays connected. It doesn't come with your kit, but you can get it at your local hardware store if you want that extra security. On the other side, we did the same thing with another short piece of hose that we cut that came in our kit. And this is a check valve that comes in our kit. The check valve does have a painted ring on it on one side. The painted ring should go on the engine side, which is going to be this side. You can't see it because the hose is over the painted side, but that is definitely on this side, the engine side. You can see a little gap here on this side, and this is where the ring would be, and you cannot see a ring here. So this is how we want it: ring, engine side, no ring, T side. And then another piece of hose that we cut. This is all you get in the kit, is this length, so you want to be careful when cutting your lengths. That's why I used the hose clamps to ensure it was going to stay on, and just attach it back to your brake vacuum booster over here. The only component left to install on our vehicle now is the monitor wire. And since our vehicle does not have a regular stoplight switch, it's got a brake pedal position sensor, we need to add a regular stoplight switch to it. So this is an additional switch in addition to the factory one. We sell these here at Etrailer.com, and you can pick those up. They're just a 2-wire on-off switch with a little plunger, and we set the depth with the nuts here after we get the bracket installed. And then whenever you press the brake pedal, the plunger is going to extend, completing the circuit here, which will illuminate our monitor wire. And then the bracket here, the way this installs, it just installs with a single nut that is already on your vehicle. So we're going to follow this bracket up. It goes up here, and it's actually easier to see the attachment point and where the bracket is through the opening under the steering column. You can see my hands in here, and this is the bracket, and it attaches to the nut that's right here on the passenger side of the steering column. You just remove the nut, slide the bracket on, and then reinstall the nut. The wires coming off of here, one of them we're going to hook to the monitor wire, that black one that we talked about earlier. That monitor wire just routes up right alongside your breakaway switch wire, and then it's just going to hang out next to your connector up front so you can plug it in. The other wire coming off of here we need to connect to a power source. So what I did to get power is I just routed the wire over. You do get some wire with the stoplight switch. We connected the red wire that comes with it to the switch on the other wire, and we routed it over here on the driver's side underneath this panel. This is the red and black harness that's power and ground for your braking system. So we just cut the red wire and added this red wire to it, so that way it's going to get powered off the same protected fuse harness as our braking system. And here's the other end of our monitor wire. It just hangs out here in the front. Now this is longer than we're going to leave it here, but I just want to be able to see it. I'm going to zip tie it up to the side of our connector here, so that way our customer can easily connect it. Because with your kit, you're going to receive a small harness here, and this has male bullet connectors on each end because it's going to plug into the female here, and the other end is going to plug into the female in the motorhome. And that's the only component we have left to install, is the motorhome side of our monitor circuit. Over here on our motorhome, we've got our other monitor wire, and you'll know you have the motorhome monitor wire because it's significantly longer than the vehicle monitor wire. They look exactly the same, but this one here is at least twice as long, so we can make the run for our motorhome. So we just connected it here with some zip ties next to our 7-way, and we routed the wire underneath the motorhome, avoiding any moving components. Again, if you can follow any of the factory wiring down there, I highly recommend that, since we know they're routed in a good location already. All the way up to the front, and then we're going to need to get it inside so we can connect it to the monitor light. Here on the inside of our motorhome, you can see the small hole that I drilled in the firewall so we could pass our wire through. The routing of the wire is going to be different depending on your motorhome, so you'll have to find your own location to get it inside, but you'll likely be able to find a spot in your firewall where you can drill a hole to pass the wire through. Once you've got it passed through, you'll want to determine where you want to put your light and then trim off the excess. We're going to use that excess wire as our ground wire as well. So right next to that hole there is a self-tapping screw with a ring terminal. I attached the ring terminal to that excess wire that I had cut off and attached it right there to the firewall for our ground. We're going to hook the ground wire to the white wire on both our monitor light and on our audio board, and then we're going to hook up the power wire to the red wire on our monitor light and our audio board. You'll want to make sure you drill out the hole in your dash. We used a 5/16 drill bit, and pass the monitor wire through first and put your sticker on before you make your wire connections, because a lot of times butt connectors are going to be larger than the hole you need for this light, and you don't want to be having all your wires out here and then you can't pass them through without enlarging the hole to the point where it's too big for our light. But then your monitor light just pushes in. It's got some little ears on it that will hold it in place. So once you've got those all connected, you're now ready to start hooking up your vehicle and begin flat towing. Now the last thing we need to do is just go back through our installation, zip tie up any loose wiring and any holes that we may have drilled or grommets we'd passed through. We're going to put some black silicone on them just to seal those back up. If you need some black silicone or extra zip ties, you can get those here at Etrailer.com. And that completes our installation of Roadmaster's InvisiBrake supplemental braking system on our 2019 Buick Envision.